Welcome to my office. And then I'm still trying to get used to it. I'm Ted Poe, and for the past 40 years, I have had an incredible journey. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about that. But first, I need to kind of get oriented. And now I've got a camera in front of me, and I got a camera over here. And I'm a little frazzled because this is all new to me. But welcome to the journey. You know, for the past 40 years, I have been part of something that's just been incredible. For 30 years, I was a part of the United States Air Force in the aircrew life support and aircrew flight equipment career field. In 2013, I retired as the Pacific Air Force's functional manager for aircrew flight equipment. Means that I had a lot of fun. I got to meet a lot of people. I got to do a lot of incredible things. What did I do? I took care of aircrew. You know, on their worst day, meaning something's going to happen, in combat, something was going to happen, or the worst nightmare that could happen to them during a crash or survival situation, our team took care of them and made sure they had the opportunity to come home. I can't tell you what that kind of feeling is. It's just a dedication of making sure somebody has a chance. You know, I've been fortunate in seeing people survive, and I've had the heartfelt respect of what it means to lose somebody. I can remember the hugs of the wives and family of someone that we were the ones that packed their chutes or took care of their gear or gave them training. And I also remember the hugs when we had to say goodbye on their final call. Nobody likes doing that. And during that time frame, I started asking a lot of questions. Why do we do this? Why are we doing this? Sound familiar? We all go through those phases. But I was a pain in the royal ass for a lot of people on that. I'd keep on asking until I got the answer. And one day, just recently, one of my guys said, "Hey, you've got all that fancy equipment inside your office. Why don't you start using it?" And I started laughing when I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, why don't you start a podcast and start reminding us of why we do what we do?" So, after a lot of thinking, I'd like to welcome you to the podcast called Legacies and Legends. There's a journey, there's a story in aircrew flight equipment, aircrew life support, rescue, survival, that whole triage or organization is there for one purpose, bringing them home. Well, in 2013, when I retired, I started my own consulting organization. Why? Because I thought I had something to offer still to industry and back to the United States Air Force. So in 2013, I started TEDGR. And just recently, I started the second organization here in the United Kingdom where I live now called MALDIF. And the whole purpose of these two organizations are to help industry deliver products that are needed by the warfighter. In our real-world processes, it's all about taking care of people. It's about developing that gear, that survival gear, that oxygen system, that ejection seat, to make sure that on the worst day, the pilot survives. So, over the years, I've always asked a lot of questions. I've been an instructor, and I've answered a lot of questions. But I also know there's a lot more to learn. Just in a simple G-suit or an anti-gravity suit, why is it made a certain way? On a survival knife, there's 50 knives out in the current market. There could be 200 knives in the market. Why is there one that is always used by the U.S. military? These kind of questions are always on my mind. So back in October of 23, I had the privilege of being part of the SAFE Association as one of the sponsors. And during that time, we set up our booth. I also set up that booth to be a recording studio. There was two factors. One is I wanted to see if my dream could actually happen of being able to interview people that I had a lot of respect for. But at the same time, is my theory about everybody's got a story, is that going to come true? And the answer was, oh, yes. So for that 3-day event, we were able to get 21 people into the booth and learn so much. And what I want to do is share their stories. And how we're going to share those stories on this podcast called Legacies and Legends. So where do we start? Do I start with Todd McDunn, or do I start with Martin Whitaker from Survitech? Do I start with one of my own guys, Ron Ruzak or Chris Moore? They're all fantastic. But there's one person I want to start with this, and that's a guy that's a part and owner of another consulting organization called Cleveland Group. And I think he's got a fantastic story to kind of sum up some of the areas or some of the things of what we do and how important that is. So, ladies and gentlemen, episode 1, Legacy and Legends.
Welcome. Thank you very much for doing this. So how about tell us who you are, what do you do, and a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Brooks Cleveland.
Okay.
I work for Cleveland Defense Group, which is a company I started with my brother and a couple other former pilots. I'm a former F-18 pilot, as well as my twin brother, who started the company with, and a couple other guys who are also pilots. Retired from the Navy in 2014. And at the time, kind of the last few years in the Navy, as we got more senior, more leadership roles, we see things like we see at SAFE, good, really cool products that could be useful and helpful as far as safety. And it was challenging to see these things at a place like SAFE and then not be able to get to see them in the squadron. So we were like, why don't we leverage what our experience in the pilot community, what we know, like you, outside the active community, and try to connect dots to be able to get this cool stuff into cockpits where what it's designed for.
So, you've got a very unique challenge or a unique experience. So how about run through just a little bit about your military career?
Sure.
To give everybody an idea of why this is important.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Navy family. My dad flew A6s. I have 3 brothers. Yep. All 4 of us were Navy pilots. All 4 F-18 pilots at one point. The 2 younger ones flew the F-35 before they left the Navy. So it's been, naval aviation's been my whole life since I was born. Following my dad's squadron mates around and then doing it myself. Yeah. All 3 of my brothers and myself went to the Naval Academy. So it's just kind of been the family business. My twin brother ejected at one point in 2012. So that became, all the life support equipment, ejection seat, everything that goes into that obviously is near and dear to our hearts, especially for him. And for us, we kind of had the unique position of, I know what it's like on the pilot side. Yes. When you kind of not take everything for granted, but you're taking the risks yourself. But then the family, friend side, when, I was at home, I hear that he ejected in Afghanistan. And it drives a totally new perspective of the reliance on the systems, on all this cool stuff. Because now it's your loved one that you're worried about, which I think most of the country can relate to that, because it's somebody else. We're concerned about that person's safety. But from the pilot perspective, it's just, you put that out of your mind, you just count on the ejection seat to work, the life support equipment to work. So that became very near and dear to all of our hearts. Really making sure the safety piece is in the cockpits, it's on the flight gear, and it all works when you're flying.
How did it change you the next day you went to fly? Did your mindset change to look at your gear just one more extra time?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And anytime there's an ejection, I think every pilot the next day is probably taking a look at everything and going down to the PR shop and thanking those guys and gals. And it becomes, it's ever present when you're flying as a pilot. But when it happens, especially it happens to a family member or a close friend, for sure you're looking at everything twice. But also kind of reinforcing the trust you have with the PRs in the Navy. Kind of get everybody together, appreciate what you guys do, and let's make sure we continue to perform at tip top, because we have every expectation and trust in those guys and girls and the ejection seat, the life support equipment is going to work. And I think you all have done a great job from the pilot perspective that when it's time to use that stuff, we don't think twice. We don't second guess. You don't think, should I?
Okay.
Should I delay this decision to eject, for example? It's not a thought. It's I always know I have one last get out of jail free card. But it's because of years of building trust with the flight equipment, with the people who are working on it, with your fellow pilots, with industry, that all of those kind of make the building blocks of this kind of unshakable trust that it works as advertised. And then when you have somebody like a family member who uses it, it hits all, and it makes you appreciate it infinitely more. I think it's great because industry, like innovation, as I mentioned earlier, when I was getting out of the Navy, we see all this cool stuff, and we want to get into the hands of the warfighters. But we can never you never want to sit still. We can't accept in 2010 this is what we had, and we're going to keep that baseline. We always want to innovate. I think it starts with a place like SAFE, where you get different types of companies who can talk to each other. Hey, we can form this partnership. We can really push our product, merge or just make a partnership, push our product to the next level. And then every year you see iterations of improvements, and kind of just along with where the government side, that the DoD is making new fighters, new trainers. They're trying to innovate, but they can't do it without this group. So, just collaborative effort, always between the government and industry, but certainly within industry. And I think SAFE in particular is different than the other shows because it is a lot of industry getting together and working together. I mean, in the business landscape, everybody is trying to improve for themselves, I guess, for lack of a better term. But coordinating and coming together certainly helps to improve the whole process.
Cleveland Group and our organization, Tedgar, have now been working with each other on several projects, about 5 years, I think it's now, right? And one of the things that I love about the organization that you and your brother have built, it's really built on ethical standards and capabilities.
Sure.
So as a consultant, what are the things that you're all kind of looking into and wanting to work into now?
I think what I would tell, what we kind of think about is, I don't know how many booths are here, but there must be 50.
There's more like 72.
Yeah. So as a consultant, my value to these companies is I can get them directly into the Navy. Now the challenge for me, of course, if I see anything great, and there's 72 great companies here, but as a consultant, I want to find the very best because if I'm picking up the phone and calling Admiral Smith every other week about this company and then this company,
Yep.
It really waters down
Absolutely.
what I'm providing. So, it kind of goes back to the mission of what our company was started for, is like get the best gear to the warfighters, aircrew, and then we're branching out from the aviation side, but that's what's most close to our heart. We want to get the best stuff to those warfighters. So we also want to pick the best companies because the more business you have sounds like a great idea. It also waters down your value to that business and to the
Absolutely
government.
right.
And you get to a point where the admirals, you turn into a salesman instead of a peer who used to do what he did, and he respects, like you mentioned, kind of the integrity with the product you're bringing in. He respects that, or she, and the more you're doing that, kind of waters it down. So I think focusing on the absolute best products to get to the warfighter.
So I really appreciate you taking time today and having a chat. And it's always great seeing you. And I know your brother's over there at one of the, yeah. But one of the last things I'll ask you, there's a senior NCO and there's a junior officer now listening to this probably. And what's that message you would like to send to them of your experience, of your processes? There could be another flyer that's going through school now, right? And they're looking at, okay, what is it that I really want to, how do I link my career and how do I run that gauntlet?
As far as being so from my perspective, I think as a pilot, especially training to become a pilot is very, solo,
Yep.
for lack of a better term. You're kind of on your own. You're studying, you're flying, you're doing your flight. There's some instructors, but it's a really individualistic process. But then you get to the fleet, as we said, the Navy, or to your squadron, and it becomes much more of a team effort. And it's not just you and your wingman or you and your force ship. It's the guys working on the airplanes. It's the folks working on the flight carriers. It really is the sum of the parts make a much greater whole than the squadron in itself. So I think the advice to a junior officer pilot would be just recognize that you have to focus on yourself for a few years to get through flight school when there's nothing else to focus on. And then when you get to an operational unit, it's a team effort.
Yeah.
So you got to put the time in with everybody, from your flying to your leadership to trust, building teamwork. It's not just showing up downstairs, signing for your jet, walking the jet, turn the keys back over, and getting out. You really have to work on building the cohesion, kind of the culture.
It's also about the relationships.
It's 100% about the relationships. And because I mentioned earlier the trust that we have in the equipment,
Yep.
it's built from the folks you work with, the folks working on the airplanes. That base layer is the personnel.
Yeah.
Like everything, that we can have the best gear in the world, but if there's no trust or teamwork or culture or kind of this unity in the command, doesn't mean anything.
Brooks, thank you, brother. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Thanks,
the time.
No problem.
And I look forward to working with you on many more projects in the future.
Thanks.